It feels very strange thinking about this now, but I finally think it's time. Time to talk about what happened. I've been back home for quite a long time. It's been too long since I left the Philippines, but the pain has started to ease. It's not fully gone, and I still have thoughts and memories, but any time I see something that reminds me of my time there, I do find myself swirling into yet a new depression. It's only the little things that set me off. A particular song, even a picture that I see online. There's always something just around the corner that can remind me of what I had there. There are good memories, at least a few, but they're all overridden by what happened. I will admit to being well past my prime now, but it wasn't always like that. I grew up in the Midwest, came from a great background, just a normal middle-class existence, great parents, wonderful siblings, and a childhood that anyone would be happy to have lived. After school, I worked hard, saved, and I was just following the path that any typical person that came from where I came from would follow. There was nothing special, nothing unique about my existence. For the most part, I was happy, but I never felt content. There was always something missing, something I was yearning for. I got married, as expected of people, and that lasted for nearly 20 years, and just like that, I'm not married anymore. A new hole in my life, no house to live in, and I'm starting to feel deflated. My 2 kids were just finishing high school when we got divorced. It was hard for them. I wanted to wait until they'd gone off to college, but it seems like she could no longer stand the sight of me. I don't know what I did. She just decided one day, and that was it. The next few years passed. I tried to save as much money as I could, made sure my kids were okay, and they finally went off to college, and that left a new sense of freedom. I was no longer responsible for their care. I only had myself now. Maybe I could start following some of the dreams that I'd held off living, in order to live a life that was expected. I always had a sense of adventure, always wanted to go travelling. I used to see pictures of different places and wonder what it felt like to actually be there. I read lots of books about countries from all over the world, but I was quite an outsider in my friend group in that sense, because my friends weren't interested. When I was talking about the book I was reading about Machu Picchu, they didn't look interested, shrugging their shoulders. Who cares? Southeast Asia was somewhere that excited me. I didn't know much about it, but I was very interested to go and see the Philippines. I'd watched videos about people who went there, people who managed to reinvent themselves and fix that broken and empty feeling that clung to them ever since their marriage broke down. Those were the types of guys I liked to watch, ones in a similar position to me. They were younger guys, but I didn't relate. I related to some of the guys who seemed to be trying to pack everything that they missed out on previously into what remaining years they had left. The place that was mentioned most often was Angeles City. It was meant to be a party town, a place with lots of bars, and in those bars, even more girls. I had no inclination that by going there, things would become more than a vacation, more than what I thought it was going to be. It would become an obsession, a place where I had a chance to meet someone else and relive my life. I always wondered how guys ended up marrying girls a lot younger than them, from places like the Philippines. And I started to understand why those feelings came to people. When I got married originally, I was much younger, and my wife was the same age as me. If I was to get married again, I would want to relive that experience, the same experience that I had with my wife, and the only way I could do that would be if I married someone who was younger. Here's me trying to rationalize myself. Not that I feel like I need to, but I did book a flight to the Philippines. I was free from having anybody looking down my neck, making sure I was behaving in the way they thought I should behave. Being able to do, for the first time, things I wanted to. It was a very liberating experience, and one I can only recommend. I packed as lightly as I could, told my kids I was going on an adventure, seeking to find myself. The type of thing that you would say to make it sound more serious than it actually was. I told them I was going to the Philippines. I guess they probably knew what that meant. I landed in Manila after a very long flight. Stayed there for a day or two, but I wanted to get up to Angeles as soon as I could. So after a few days, I got a taxi. It was different in the Philippines. Hot, sticky, chaotic. The tricycles and the jeepneys, all these things I'd never seen before. To people who were there, everything would have been normal. That was a moment when you realise that what was normal for you was not normal for somebody else. When I got to Angeles, I was dropped off right outside the door of my hotel. I knew from research that Red Street was where I wanted to go, so I booked a hotel within walking distance of there. I checked into my hotel, took a shower. I remember looking out of the window of this really nice hotel, looking in the distance and seeing another nice building that seemed to have a pool on the roof. But if you shifted your head ever so slightly to the right, you would see a slum. Children walking around without shoes on the dirt. Wooden huts patched up with signage, no running water, no electric, and a roof that didn't look like it would survive a hurricane or rainstorm. That hit home. They seemed to be two sides to the Philippines, and you could see it in plain sight. It wasn't hidden. I walked out of my hotel that evening, and it was a bit different to Manila, where I'd stayed the previous 2 days. On one street corner, you might see piles of trash, beggars, and a strange smell in the air. But I wasn't there for that. I was there for what other people like me were there for: excitement and adventure. It was only a short walk to Red Street, neon lights flickering, music blaring out of doorways hidden behind curtains. It was everything that I read about, everything I'd seen on videos, but being there in person was so very different to seeing it on a video. On video, it was like you could see it, but when you were there, it was like you could touch it and feel it. You felt the atmosphere of what it was like around you. You heard people talking, other people living their lives. It was great, but it was also surreal. I walked into the first bar, about a third of the way down Red Street, on the right if you were walking towards the McDonald's at the end. In the other direction, it would have been on the left. The guy that was sat at the front pulled back the curtain and I entered a new world. What a world it was. There were probably 20 girls inside, and a few guys sat down. And when you went in, they all stood up. All the girls stood up, and you'd take a seat and order a drink. That was as far as I got the first night. I mean, I went to other bars around, but that was it. I had no firm plans as to when I needed to leave or what I needed to do after, so I wanted to hold back a bit. I wanted to make the moment last longer. That was my world for I don't know how long, days, weeks, but I was enjoying it. I was trying to pack in as much as I could. I wanted to give myself a night for every week of my life that I'd been stuck in that marriage. That was a lot of weeks, but that's what I wanted to do. Then came that night. I was at one of the bars on the same street. The curtain was peeled away and I walked in, only planning to have 1 or 2 drinks before going to the next place. They were playing old rock music, the kind of stuff I could listen to for hours, and they never got over the fact that people still smoked in there. People were still smoking in the bars in Angeles, and I'm told that's still the case today. I got a drink and sat down, and just taking it all in. Then she came over. She walked down from the stage, without me indicating, and took a seat right next to me, pushing up very close to me. Her English was good. She smiled at me and said hi. Hi, I replied. I guess I probably sounded more surprised than intended. She asked me if I was new in town. I said I was. I've just been here for a little bit of time, but I'm loving it. She said, Angeles is many things. She said, be careful here, in a joking way. That disarmed me a bit. No opening line. She didn't ask for a drink straight away or anything. There was no aggressive sales pitch. She seemed to just observe me and ask questions without indicating that there was any monetary intention. She seemed great. Her name was Laya. Nice to meet you, I said, and I got a drink for her, and we talked for a while. Not about the bar, not about the usual stuff. We talked about where I was from, what my life was like. I talked about my kids, work, my life, and she listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. She told me a little bit about herself, telling me she was from a province called Leyte, and she came to Angeles to work. She had 2 younger sisters still in school and aging parents. Her mother was sick. She spoke about them with such love, and she was solely responsible for their well-being. She didn't deliver it, though, like it was a sob story. She really seemed to be in her element. One thing that I noticed, the longer we talked, all the noise around us in the bar, it seemed to fade. All of the music was so loud, and when we were speaking to each other, we had to raise our voices, nearly even shouting. It didn't feel like we were doing that. It felt like we were having a nice, peaceful conversation, and her presence was quite calming. The conversation I had with her, and the way we looked at each other, in the eye from time to time, it all felt like I'd known her for a lot longer than 2 hours. There was a definite connection, a real connection. It wasn't just a physical attraction, although she was gorgeous. I felt like she was different to all the other girls I saw around. I'd spoken to other girls, but they all seemed to be going by the same playbook. Can I sit down? Yes. Drink? Yes. My name is. I am from. I am so old. Where are you from? You know, all the basic generic talking that you have to go through. But Lila was different, and I still think that she was different. I saw the difference. I felt the difference, and anyone that says otherwise wasn't there and didn't know. The bars never seemed to close, but I'd been there for a long time, and her shift was coming to an end. She said that she will be there the following day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I think she was telling me this just to let me know if I wanted to see her again, all I needed to go was go back to the bar. The way she'd said that, though, made me understand that this was her reality. This was her life. This is what she did. And I felt sorry for her in that moment. How could such a sweet and what seemed to be such an innocent girl work somewhere like this? I asked her, "What are you doing after you finish work?" And she said she's just going to get something to eat before going back to her small room that she rented. I asked if I could take her for something to eat, and she looked at the big clock on the wall just behind the bar, and in a rush she said, "Meet me outside in 10 minutes. And with that, she stood up and walked off, and I paid the bill, hung around a bit, and went to wait outside. When I was standing there, I felt alive. It was exhilarating. I'm still in the busyness of the crowded street, flashing neon lights everywhere, scores of people walking past me, trying to sell me all kinds of things. But not long after, she walked out. She looked different, without all the bright lights flashing around. If anything, she looked more beautiful. And I said, "What do you usually eat after work?" She just said normal Filipino food. There's not too far away. She grabbed my hand and took me about 5 minutes walk, and we pulled up at a shop that had trays of food outside. I hadn't tried anything like this yet. It was way more than anything I'd ever tried before, but I didn't want to be rude, and I said, I was thinking something a bit more special. How about we go to a really nice restaurant? She looked at me, said okay, up to you, and led me about a 10-minute walk, and we found somewhere that looked more suitable for me. We talked a lot more in the restaurant. It was a bit more to my taste. We had a few more drinks, and she started talking about all kinds of things. Her dreams, she wanted to go back to finish school because she had to drop out. Business openings, all kinds of things. She used to dream about when she was younger. She dropped little hints about her family struggles, and they always needed money for something, and it was her job to give it to them. I didn't envy the pressure that she had, but she never acted like she was complaining or like she resented people who didn't have to do what she did. It was just a fact about her life, and she accepted it. But when she raised those points, I felt an even bigger draw to her. It was such a contrast to my own life, so different. I was comfortable, although my existence was predictable. I wanted to get to know her. I wanted to help her. I wanted her to have a better life, and I wanted it to be because of me. Waking up in the morning, an extremely happy girl there, so grateful that she's been saved from the life she was living. Those were all the thoughts I was having when we were eating in that restaurant. I later learned that there was a word or a saying for people like me. I wanted to be a saviour, and I had a saviour complex. The thought of saving her excited me. We finished a meal and walked out of the restaurant, and she asked me where my hotel was. I told her the name, and she said she knew it. And then she said, "Don't say anything, come with me." She held my hand and walking in the direction of my hotel, and when we got there, I was just about to say goodnight, but she shushed me and went inside. She blew me away. I didn't just want to save her now, I wanted everything about her. What were the chances of me finding her out of all those girls around? I felt like I'd won the lottery. All the other guys with girls, I bet none of them were lucky like I was, finding such a sweet and genuine girl. She left the following morning back to her room to get a change of clothes, but she gave me her number, and I gave her mine. And I said, "You can call me first." When she left, I went back to sleep, and I was woken up an hour or so later by the phone ringing. It was her. "Are you going to come and see me tonight?" she said. "Of course I am," I said. "Would you like to meet somewhere else, not the bar?" She said she was working there, so it would be best if I met her there, because she would need to pay the bar if she left. I said, "How about we just pay them, but we don't need to meet there. We can meet somewhere else." She said that was okay, and we met in the mid-afternoon at a restaurant quite close to Red Street. As soon as I saw her, I knew that was it. I wanted her to be mine. We talked in the restaurant, went out for some drinks, and repeated the night before. I felt like I was a hero, a guy who was going to be responsible for saving this girl, for pulling her out of poverty, and making her aware of what else was available in the world. And I thought that her sense of gratitude and delight by not having to work like that anymore would mean that her love for me would probably have been stronger than my love for her. That's what I was thinking about in that moment, but the problem was telling her not to stop working there. She needed money. I was thinking about how to talk about it. I told her that I don't have any plans, I could be there for as long as I wanted, and then I thought, why don't I ask her to travel to some of the different places in the Philippines with me? That way, I felt like I had a local with me, and we could get to know each other even more. At this point, I felt like I already knew everything about her. I was already thinking I could see myself with her for the next 10 or even 20 years. I saw her every day over the following week, taking her out of the bar, and I was ready to ask her. I was panicking, scared that she wouldn't want to go with me, that she had somebody else who was equally interested in saving her. But I plucked up the courage and said, "How would you like to go to Manila with me? Maybe we can go to Boracay. Lots of places I want to go, and I want you to go with me." My heart was pounding when I was speaking those words, knowing that if she said no, I may never have these feelings with anyone again. But without even hesitating, she looked at me and said she'd love to. I was so happy when she said that, and I couldn't believe it. And I even promised to make sure that she had enough money because she wasn't able to work. When she agreed to go with me, I knew that she would become a big part of my life. I had a return flight booked for 3 months after I arrived. That seemed to be a long way away, and I didn't even think about it, but I knew I could change that again if I needed to. The following day, we left Angeles in a taxi to Manila. We stopped off halfway for something to eat, and then when we got to Manila, we went to BGC where I had booked a hotel. I was spending a bit more than I was planning on spending, but I just wanted to show her the other side to life, the side that I felt like she deserved. I felt like she deserved it more than I did. I wanted her to experience that and imagine a life where that became normal for her. It was a great hotel. BGC felt weird, out of place in the rest of Manila, spotlessly clean, great restaurants as well, and we spent a few weeks there. Time goes on, and I'm feeling like she's falling for me even more than I'm falling for her, and I was falling so hard. Next, we went to Boracay. Talk about beauty. The most beautiful girl in the world, on the most beautiful beach in the world, next to the most beautiful ocean in the world. What more could a guy want? I didn't want anything else in that moment. If someone had have told me, you could be in this moment forever, but you can't do anything else, I think I'd have taken it because I was that happy. I loved Boracay. I felt like it would be a great place to spend a lot of time, a great place to live, but I found it was slightly more expensive than the other places I'd been. But it wasn't overly so. We stayed in another great hotel there, and at this point, I'm feeling like Lila is everything I need to make my life complete again. She's talking about different things, future, her dreams, things that she wants to do, and it was on Boracay that I said to her, "How about if we have a shared future moving forwards?" I opened up and told her how much I felt like she'd saved me from my old life, how much I loved her, how much I wanted to be with her, and that I wanted to live in the Philippines permanently with her. I had enough money to make that happen, and if that's what she was feeling, that's what I would do. She hesitated slightly when I started talking about us having a future together, almost as if she didn't want to come across as being too eager at the thought. But after 5 to 10 seconds, she stood up and came to sit on my knee and said that would make her happier than ever. It was decided then. The Philippines is where I would live. Lila is the girl I would live with. Life was just about to start to be even better than I thought possible. We didn't talk about it again for the rest of the evening. We just watched the sunset, enjoying great food and even greater drinks, and I'm exactly where I wanted to be. The following day I called my kids. I'm going to be living here, and I don't know when I'm going to be going back. They just said they hoped I was okay. They didn't try to stop me, but I bet they thought it wasn't their place to stop me, and they just hoped I would be fine. After I spoke to my kids, we go and sit down under some umbrellas by the pool and order cocktails. And I start talking to Lila about where we should live, what we should do. I was semi-retired, didn't need to work. She had all these dreams that she wanted to do, and I knew I didn't want her to forget her dreams completely, but I thought it would be better if instead of her doing anything that she didn't need to, she just stayed with me. That's all she really needed to do. Although I loved Angeles City, that was more of a single-person paradise. I wouldn't have wanted to live there if I was going to be with Lila. I talked with her about where she'd like to live, and she always kept talking about wanting to go to Leyte, where she was from. That's where she'd really like to live, and she only left because of financial reasons. It seemed to be a very popular place, Leyte, where girls came from that guys met. I'd never been there, obviously, but I never did any research about there. I didn't know what it was like or what to expect, and I wanted to stay somewhere that was a bit more well-known. I thought back to our time in Manila, BGC. That seemed to be perfect. It was like you weren't in the Philippines when you were in BGC. Of course you were in Manila, but you might as well not have been. So, you had the haven in the middle of all that chaos. If you wanted the chaos, you could have it, but if you didn't need it. That was by reasoning, and Lila jumped at the opportunity of moving into a nice apartment in BGC. We rented a place together. I'm juggling my visa situation to make sure I don't overstay, extending when needs be, leaving the country when I need to. And over the course of the next year, things were great. I managed to get a bank account open. I got a joint one in both our names so that we could both easily pay bills, do shopping, just like a normal couple. It was a bit of a hassle to get my ACR card, but once I had that, I managed to find a bank that would let us open the account. I transferred in about $75,000, about half of my liquid assets. The rest of my investments were all in an index fund that paid me my income. It felt good to have a bank account in the Philippines. It made things easier, and I think she was happy that she didn't need to ask me all the time if she wanted to go shopping or if she needed to send money for her family. It gave her more independence, and I felt like she respected me because of that. Sometimes I would have to pinch myself. I'd look out of the window of the condo we were living in, the amazing view of BGC, the rest of Manila in the distance, and I'd look around at how beautifully appointed the apartment was and see Lila. I felt so proud to have been able to give her this life, and I felt that she loved me so much because of it. She never indicated that she was anything other than who I thought she was. Maybe I didn't know who she was. Maybe she was who she was, but that wasn't who I saw. Maybe I saw what I wanted to see. I don't know what it was, but I was in love with her, and I asked her to marry me. That was after living in BGC for quite a long time. I'd gotten to know her. I'd bought her a really beautiful ring. It was a whole 1 carat, and I got down on one knee, the traditional way at a nice restaurant, and she smiled from ear to ear, hugged me, and said yes. She'd made me the happiest man in the world. I'm starting to think about our wedding. What's it like when we're married? It was exciting, and I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I thought she was the happiest she'd been as well. She was always talking to her family on the phone. They always had problems coming up, and she was the one who had to help. I told her it was okay to use the bank account for little things when she needed to. If you needed to send money to the family, you don't need to ask. I had expected that she would do things within reason. Maybe $100 here, in 2 weeks later, $150, A month after that, $200. Maybe she'd do some grocery shopping for the week and spend $80. That's what I was thinking. I never told her, don't spend too much. I just thought it was obvious that the money was there and it wasn't meant to all go. At least, it was obvious to me. I'm starting to think, though, about getting married. Maybe we could do it in Boracay. Maybe somewhere else. It was an exciting time, and I was happy with her. The happiest I'd been. It can't have been long after we were engaged, maybe 3 months. I hadn't even used the bank account during that time. She'd be doing all the shopping and paying for everything when we went out. And I liked that. I liked that she was able to pull out some money and pay the bill. Restaurants always came to me to pay, and it was expected that I was the one who paid for everything. But when she pulled out money and paid, I bet it made her feel good and proud. I thought that the waiter, or whoever it was that was serving us, and maybe even the other foreigners in the restaurant that were looking at us, I felt like they envied me because I wasn't like them. I had a real girl. But she liked that sense of independence. She liked being in control of that, and I trusted her. I trusted her with it all. That was the bank account where I transferred in my monthly income. I was happy with the amount I had in every month, more than enough to live, but I was in for a rude awakening. Around this time, she's going to go shopping. I was going to stay in the room. I was just playing on the computer, reading up on something I was interested in. I told her I'd see her soon. She came and kissed me goodbye and left. But she was back before long and said, so matter-of-factly, that I had to ask her to repeat herself. Oh, we need to top up the bank account. The money's gone. I looked at her in amazement. Started laughing. I thought she was joking. When I saw her face and realised it wasn't a joke, I nearly had a heart attack. What do you mean all the money's gone? $75,000? Plus the few $1,000s I sent in every month? You're telling me that there's no money left? She looked at me in a bit of a daze. I just told you there's no money left. You told me I could use it to help my family and for things I needed. I didn't know what to say. I did tell her that, but nobody could spend that amount of money in less than 6 months. I froze. Was she expecting me to top up the bank account with another $75,000 so she could do the same again? I then explained to her what I meant by take care of your family. A little bit. The money was meant to stay in the bank. It might go down slightly, but my income is being put into the bank every month, and you're telling me $75,000 is all gone? She repeated herself. Yes, you told me I could use it to help my family. That was when the dream was over. Her idea of what was happening was so different to mine. So very different. I thought she'd have been happy sending little bits of money to her family when she needed to. I was okay with that. But all the money? And she expected more? I couldn't believe it. What have you spent all the money on? I asked. Well, I paid for a small house for my parents. That was $30,000. I bought this new phone. I bought a phone for both of my sisters. I bought a new motorcycle for my father. That means he can work better and take care of my mother who's sick. I bought some land in my village. I thought that we might be able to build a house on that land in the future. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't be angry because I did tell her that she could use the money. I just hadn't expected her to do that. When I told her that this is not what I had in mind, and when she went out that day, if I'd have guessed how much money was in the bank, I'd have probably said 72 or 73,000. She'd use it all. And she said to me then, so you can't put more money in the bank? I've got my income, I told her. That's more than enough for us to have a good life here, but I'm not going to be selling any of my investments. I'm not going to be transferring in big sums of money. That one was meant to last for a long time. She looked really disappointed and really upset about that, and I felt like my life had been completely ripped apart yet again. I wasn't a saviour. I was just a guy who she managed to convince she needed saving. She'd blown through all that money, and I couldn't get it back. What are we going to do now then? I said. It's okay, she said. I won't spend any more money. But when she said that, she didn't look like she used to look. I could tell that's not what she wanted to say, but I still thought about that money and couldn't get it out of my mind. I could have bought a nice car with that, or anything. I stopped looking at her in the same way after that. I thought she was happy with little, happy with not having to work in the bar, happy that I'd come in and whisked her away and made her life better. She wasn't content with just living. She used my trust to take all that money, thinking that's what I meant. That's what hurts the most, The fact that she thought that that was acceptable. The fact that she thought that's what I said. How did she think that? Didn't she realize that that is crazy? She'd ripped up the illusion I had, and it wasn't fun anymore, and I realized that she was just like every other girl. It still hurts me deeply to think about that. The amount I loved her, the amount I trusted her, only for her to think what was happening was so different to what I thought was happening. I still think about her all the time. I still love her, but the pain has eased. It hasn't been easy, but I knew if I stayed I would lose more. I wouldn't have been able to keep myself together. I paid for her to get a taxi up to Angeles City, back to the bar, and the worst part, she didn't even seem to mind.